Hello everybody, it's Foo here, and I'm joined today by my friend John, aka Pokemon, and we are going to discuss something really interesting. I normally talk about buffs on this channel, but as Sword and Shield are coming up soon, I thought it would be a good opportunity to take a look back and look at Pokemon nerfs. We're going to be looking at some huge Pokemon nerfs and see which ones are the biggest losers.
On the flip side, we're going to be looking at the biggest winners on my channel, some of the biggest buffs we've seen to Pokemon recently, but that's something we'll talk about later on. Let's get right on into this, starting with number 5.
At number 5, we're going to talk about Gengar. This guy is a fan favorite, and for good reason. He's got an amazing special attack stat, and he's super fast, so he's a really good attacker, and he looks awesome while doing it, so that's all amazing. In all generations up to this one, he has had the ability Levitate, which is a fantastic ability that goes so well with his really nice Ghost Poison typing. This typing gives him 2 immunities and 2 quadruple resistances, meaning that there are 4 types which he doesn't take any damage from really at all, which is great. And then the Levitate gives him an extra immunity. So he has so many opportunities to take advantage of poor matchups on the opponent's part and just deal some massive damage or do some tricksy things, which is great. But going into Pokemon Sun and Moon, Gengar lost the Levitate ability for something much worse, in my opinion, and that is the Cursed Body ability. Now, just losing Levitate in itself meant that he lost an immunity and gained a weakness, which is awful, but he's gained the Cursed Body ability, so surely that's something, right? Well, the Cursed Body ability is not half as reliable as Levitate. You know what Levitate does, and it's going to work all the time. Cursed Body, if your opponent hits you with an attack, there's a 30% chance that you're going to disable that attack. That's bad for a number of reasons. 1, 30% chance is not that high, and 2, you have to be hit by an attack. Gengar is not the bulkiest dude out there. He doesn't like being hit by attacks. He likes sitting back, throwing powerful attacks off at the opponent and watching them fall. So being hit by attacks is not really something you want as a condition for Gengar's ability. This ability is much worse, in my opinion. The other thing to note is that Destiny Bond was also nerfed, and not all Gengars use this, so it's not as big a deal. But you used to be able to spam Destiny Bond until your opponent takes you out, and then they would faint with you. Now, if you spam Destiny Bond, it actually gets less likely to work. So after you use Destiny Bond, the next time will only have a 50% success rate, which isn't great, not reliable at all. So another reason why Gengar isn't quite as good as he used to be.
While Mega Gardevoir didn't lose its ability, it did have a nerf to that ability, which was decently significant. Now, Pixelate is an ability that allows normal type moves to become fairy type moves when used by the Pokemon that has Pixelate. And in the past generations, the power is multiplied by 1.3, and it really turned Mega Gardevoir into a nuke whenever it was using Hyper Voice or any of these other moves that were affected. But in this generation, the power is actually multiplied by 1.2, and I know that's not a crazy nerf, but it really does affect things. Obviously, it's a step down, and we actually see that with Aerialate and Refrigerate as well. So Mega Pinsir, Mega Salamence, and Mega Glalie are all affected, but Mega Gardevoir was definitely hit the worst. Those other 3 Pokemon are still incredibly powerful, and they didn't really get a huge drop in usage specifically because of this, but in Mega Gardevoir's case, while it's still a really powerful and good Pokemon, we got Tapu Lele, which was immediate competition, and with this drop, Tapu Lele is just better all around. With Psychic Terrain, it's more powerful already on the Psychic side, and then the fact that it can actually use items, whether it's, Choice Specs, a Z move, Life Orb, its Fairy moves are also more powerful than Mega Gardevoir. Mega Gardevoir just can't compete with Tapu Lele in the singles format or the doubles format, and while it's not the worst thing that's ever happened to a Pokemon, it's definitely very significant in this generation, and it's one thing that stands out.
Now to a completely different kind of nerf. We've talked about ability nerfs, but now we're going to look at a move nerf. And there are actually 2 Pokemon that are affected equally by this in Smeargle and Darkrai, because we're going to talk about Dark Void. This had 2 aspects to the nerf. Smeargle and Darkrai are affected differently. They both love to use this move, but not quite so much anymore. So Dark Void is a dark type move, signature move of Darkrai. that puts the opponent to sleep. And in doubles, it actually puts both opponents to sleep, which is really, really strong and such a powerful tactic. It does have shaky accuracy. In previous generations, it was only 80% accuracy, but that's still accurate enough to warrant using, especially in doubles, because 80% on both opponents is a very good chance to put at least one of them to sleep, and still decent to put both of them to sleep. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, however, this accuracy was nerfed to only 50%. So Darkrai really doesn't like using this move anymore because it's so inaccurate. There are other sleep-inducing moves that actually have higher accuracy that are already deemed far too inaccurate to use in most competitive forums, things like Hypnosis and Sing, but they're actually more accurate than Dark Void is now, which is crazy. So you really don't see much use of this by Darkrai anymore. It's still a fast and powerful attacker, and it has access to Nasty Plot, so it's still able to do things, but without that sleep-inducing move, it's very limited. In terms of Smeargle, this goes one step further, because in Pokemon Sun and Moon, no Pokemon other than Darkrai is even able to use Dark Void. Smeargle really liked to use this move in the VGC format in previous generations, but now if it tries to use Dark Void, it just fails, can't use it at all. Smeargle does have other sleep-inducing moves to fall back on, but in the doubles format, obviously it's not going to be able to put both opposing Pokemon to sleep at the same time, so it is less powerful there.
Thundurus has been an incredibly scary Pokemon since its introduction in the Generation 5 games, but in this generation, its best ability, Prankster, was massively nerfed. Now, the big thing that happened here is Dark types are now completely immune, so Thundurus's priority Thunder Wave can no longer be used to stop terrifying Dark Sweepers like Mega Gyarados or Greninja, who got way more usage in this generation. Not only is Prankster nerfed in that way, but Thunder Wave is also nerfed. It can now miss, which is incredibly frustrating. You know, it went from something that you knew was always gonna hit, now it's like Toxic. I've lost many games missing a Toxic. Not something that's fun at all, but not only that, the speed of paralyzed Pokemon is decreased by 50% as opposed to the 75%. A welcome change in my opinion, but still a significant decrease from what we've been used to, and it just makes Thundurus a little bit less scary in this regard. Another move that it commonly paired with Prankster and Swagger was also nerfed this generation, as now Confusion is way less powerful as the opponent only hits themselves 1 out of 3 times rather than 1 out of 2 times, just making it something that you want to rely on way less. I mean, relying on Confusion isn't the best thing, but at least you had a coin flip. 1 out of 3 is a pretty huge difference. And the final thing that really got Thundurus down to the dumps this generation is Tapu Koko. Another Tapu making a big threat a little bit less viable, as it's provided some very stiff competition. It's a lot faster, or at least it's faster, it has Electric Surge, and it's a stronger Pokemon in general. So not one super significant thing with Thundurus, but a bunch of little things that have really just nerfed this monster.
Before we get into the top spot, there are some honorable mentions to get through. So first off, a lot of Dark types actually are slightly worse this generation, things like Mega Absol and Bishop, for 2 reasons. Firstly, Z moves were introduced, which is fine. They're offensive Pokemon, so actually might benefit from them, but actually they're very potent users of the move Knockoff, and Z Crystals can't be knocked off the opponent. So with Z Crystals introduced and with Mega Stones also there, that's potentially 2 Pokemon on the opponent's team that can't be knocked off or have reduced power knockoff, which means that these Pokemon like Mega Absol and Bishop are going to be a lot less powerful if 1/3 of your opponent's team is only taking unboosted knockoff damage. So that is really, really powerful. And also, Sucker Punch is a very favorable move used by these Pokemon. They like to set up Swords Dance and then sweep through the opponent's team with Sucker Punch. That actually went from 80 base power in previous games down to 70 base power in the current games, which is a kind of significant decrease in power for these Pokemon. The good thing is, though, that Knockoff is still such a useful move to use, and you can get rid of items so usefully and do tons of damage. So these Pokemon will never truly go out of fashion. Also, Pursuit is a great move that they like to run too. So they're always going to be very strong, and that's why they didn't quite make this list. But still, they are nerfed and not quite as good as they used to be.
Another honorable mention is Mega Kangaskhan, who actually has a pretty interesting nerf as it was very specifically targeted. Parental Bond is an ability that only Mega Kangaskhan has, and it was nerfed so that the second hit does slightly less damage. And I guess if you don't know what Parental Bond does, it attacks the first time just normally as Kangaskhan, and the second time it's supposed to be the baby, and it's just a little bit of a weaker hit, and this generation, it's even weaker than it was before. Not only that, but Fake Out is also a lot less reliable with Tapu Lele running around in most formats, but this is still a very scary Pokemon. There was a specific nerf to its very broken ability, but it's still gonna hit really hard. It's still decently fast. It has incredible bulk, and you can still use Seismic Toss. That is not nerfed in the slightest. That is going to be an absolute problem in any format, and just in general, interesting to note, but nothing super significant.
So in the top spot, to no one's surprise, is going to be Talonflame. This Pokemon was so crazily powerful in Generation 6 in Pokemon X and Y when it was introduced that you saw it literally everywhere. It was very, very centralizing in most metas. It was great in doubles as well, really, really strong, and that's all down to its Gale Wings ability, giving all of its flying type moves priority. This Pokemon was fast in the first place, but when you're given priority to all of your flying type moves, which are most of its strongest moves, Brave Bird was so good for this Pokemon. It meant that you didn't have to worry about your speed stat. You could make this Pokemon super strong, super bulky, and you'd be able to take hits while setting up Sword Stances. It was just such a threat, so easy to sweep through an unprepared opponent. Since Pokemon Sun and Moon, this has changed significantly. Talonflame no longer has such a powerful Gale Wings ability because now the priority to flying type attacks only works when Talonflame is at full HP. Now that might not seem like such a problem until you realize that its strongest attacks in Brave Bird and Flare Blitz both cause recoil, meaning that you will very rarely be at full HP. And this Pokemon doesn't have the highest attack stat, so it can't really use any other weaker moves. Brave Bird and Flare Blitz are still definitely the most usable move that it has. You also have to worry more about entry hazards like Stealth Rock, which will deal 50% of your health. And that was bad before because obviously that's a lot of health lost, but not only do you lose all that health, you now don't have your priority moves either, and you don't have priority Roost, which was a massive factor for why Talonflame was so good. This Pokemon is still very usable. It's very nice because it can get priority Z moves with Supersonic Sky Strike, which is great, but it really is not what it used to be because of that massive nerf to Gale Wings. And it's a shame because I think this is a really cool Pokemon, and it's nice to see that it still is able to be used, but it used to be pretty much one of the best Pokemon in the entire game, and that is certainly not the case now. But that's all about the doom and gloom. We've got obviously a lot of positive things to look at because over on John's channel we talk about the biggest buffs, and some Pokemon have just shot up in viability. They're so good now, so definitely check out John's video. Remember to like and subscribe this video, it helps out my channel and lets me know what you want to see more of. But that's going to be all for now. I've been Foo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.